Dецата беа надеж дека ќе потурат. Време е за конечно будење.
I got you, homie.
Let's go.
In a post-apocalyptic world invaded by zombies, human civilization has been completely destroyed by endless hordes of the undead. The cities are no longer habitable. A boy named Marco has been living in the forest with his father since he was little to help him survive the dangers of the outside world. His father gives him a gun and tries to teach him how to protect himself, but Marco is too small and doesn't have the strength to pull back the slide. When the weapon slips from his hands and falls to the ground, he nervously looks at his father. Although they depend on each other to survive, his father is a man of few words who rarely interacts with Marco. He seems indifferent to Marco's growth, which makes the boy feel isolated and alone. Still, his father deeply distrusts the zombie-infested world beyond the forest. Until Marco can properly defend himself, he forbids him from leaving their safe shelter. Marco is full of curiosity about the outside world. Every time he goes to fetch water, he carves a mark on a tree next to the riverbank, gradually extending his trail further into the unknown. One day, while wandering through the woods, Marco comes across an abandoned RV. He cautiously approaches the vehicle and peers inside. Climbing through the window, he begins to search around and eventually finds a toy on one of the shelves. But just as he is examining it, a dark figure suddenly appears inside the RV. Marco, startled, freezes and crouches in the corner, trembling with fear. Fortunately, the stranger doesn't seem hostile. When the figure extends the toy toward him, Marco realizes it's another boy, someone his own age. Feeling the kindness of the boy, Marco takes off his headphones and invites him to listen to music together. And so the two lonely boys find friendship in each other. Marco knows he can't tell his father what happened, so he carefully hides the toy that Miko gave him. Then grabbing his water bottle, he hurries back to the camp. However, he has been gone for too long. His father is furious and yells at Marco, so harshly that the chestnuts he had collected spill all over the floor. Assuming Marco had only been gathering chestnuts, his father lets it go and doesn't press further. After that, Marco begins visiting the RV frequently and learns that Miko lives there with his mother. Unlike Marco's distant and cold father, Miko's mother often warmly hugs him. Inspired by this, Marco tries to do the same when he returns to the camp. He wraps his arms around his father, imitating Miko's mother, but his father pushes him away immediately. When Marco sees a photo of an unfamiliar woman in their cabin, he gathers the courage to ask his father about her. His father doesn't respond, simply telling Marco to go to bed. Once, his father had given Marco a storybook. In it, there was a fairy who left the forest and went to a place called Stone Valley. Marco convinces himself that his mother is like that fairy, and if he can reach Stone Valley, he will find her. One day, when Marco and his father go hunting in the forest as they always do, a sudden series of gunshots echoes in the distance. Marco quickly hides behind a large tree. From there, he sees Miko's mother clutching her arm, kneeling before his father. To Marco's horror, his father approaches her and without a second's hesitation, pulls the trigger. Terrified, Marco runs straight home and hides under his bed, trembling. He stays there until late into the night. When his father finally returns, his state is completely unhinged. His hands tremble as he takes a swig of strong liquor, muttering incoherently to himself. Seeing his father's volatile behavior only strengthens Marco's resolve to find the mother he has never known. The next morning, Marco packs his belongings and leaves the cabin without a word. He heads straight to Miko, convinces him to join him on the journey to Stone Valley to find his mother. But as they make their way through the forest, Miko suddenly stops walking, refusing to go any further. With no other option, Marco tells Miko the truth. Soon the two boys reach the edge of the forest. Just as they are about to leave, a strange figure appears in the distance. They quickly crouch down, holding their breath to avoid being seen. Carefully, they follow a narrow path and find an abandoned car to hide in as the sound of heavy footsteps grows louder around them. Both boys anxiously peer out the car windows. Suddenly, the eerie sound of zombies banging on the car windows sends Miko into a panic. Marco tries to calm him by covering his ears with his hands. He doesn't know what to do, but then out of nowhere, all the zombies outside fall to the ground. The car door opens and Marco, still trembling from the scare, is surprised to see his father standing there. After carefully checking that Marco isn't hurt or bitten, his father lets out a deep sigh of relief. He completely ignores Miko, grabs Marco's arm, and insists they return to the camp immediately. But Marco resists, pulling his arm free and yelling at his father, furious and hurt. He accuses his father of being a bad person, blames him for killing Miko's mother, and even suspects that his father might have been responsible for his own mother's death. His father has no time to explain. All he knows is that the noise they've made will soon attract more zombies, but Marco refuses to leave. With no other option, his father hurriedly hides Marco in a safe spot and returns to rescue Miko. His aim is precise, and with each shot, a zombie falls. It doesn't take long for him to clear the area and pull Miko to safety. Just then, Marco turns around and freezes. A zombie has stealthily crept up behind him. In a panic, he grabs his father's arm. His hands tremble as he points the gun. The sudden shot startles his father, who without hesitation runs toward Marco. But before he can reach him, a zombie lunges and knocks him to the ground. Fortunately, his father manages to fight it off, narrowly avoiding disaster. Quickly getting to his feet, he runs to Marco's side. Realizing it was a false alarm, he kneels to assure Marco that Miko is safe. Then with urgency in his voice, his father urges Marco to follow him back to the camp before it's too late. At that moment, his father rolls up his sleeve and reveals a recent bite wound on his arm. Desperation washes over him as he realizes what it means. Quickly, he moves away from Marco and chains himself to a nearby tree. Marco, sensing something is wrong, approaches his father. It's then that his father finally reveals the truth. He hadn't killed Miko's mother out of cruelty. She had already been bitten, and ending her suffering was the only way to save her. Marco hugs his father tightly. His father wants nothing more than to hug his son back, but he doesn't want to risk infecting him. He knows his time is running out. Soon, he will transform into a bloodthirsty zombie. With a heavy heart, he urges Marco to leave while he still can. Marco, holding back tears, follows his father's orders. He takes Miko's hand, and the two begin walking along the path. Not long after, his father's eyes begin to turn white. Moments later, the silence of the forest is broken by the sound of a single gunshot. Marco stops briefly, his heart heavy with grief, but he doesn't stop moving. Without his father's protection, he knows he must become stronger. As night falls, Marco and Miko huddle beneath a large tree. Marco feels lost and uncertain about the future, but the photo of his mother gives him a ray of hope. The next morning, they resume their journey at first light. After what feels like an eternity of walking, they finally emerge from the forest into a vast open field. Following a set of train tracks, they press onward, unsure of how far they've traveled. Their food supplies are nearly depleted. Fortunately, they stumble upon a man sitting by the tracks, listening to a radio. The man looks Marco up and down, sizing him up. Gathering his courage, Marco asks the man for food. The man doesn't respond immediately. Instead, he asks where they're headed. Upon hearing their destination, he admits he wishes he could help, but explains that he can't leave. He has the responsibility of caring for several kids in his house. Marco, curious, looks toward a nearby building with barred windows, and then realizes the tragic truth. The man's children have been infected and turned into zombies. The man can't bring himself to harm them, so he keeps them locked up. After filling their stomachs, Marco and Miko continue their journey. Their playful banter makes the long walk feel less lonely. As the sun sinks in the sky, they know they need to find a place to spend the night. Soon, they come across an abandoned train on the tracks. It seems like the perfect shelter. Marco cautiously approaches and opens a small gap to look inside, only to discover that the train car is full of zombies. Startled, the boys stumble backward. Fortunately, the zombies are trapped inside and can't get out. Breathing a sigh of relief, they quickly move away. Not far from the village, two armed men suddenly appear blocking their path. The unarmed and defenseless boys have no choice but to obey as the men force them into a vehicle. After a long, intense ride, they are taken to a survivor camp. The leader, John, studies the boys closely. His expression changes to one of astonishment when he realizes that the two aren't infected and are healthy. John explains the terrible situation. Since the zombie outbreak years ago, all babies born to survivors have been infected with the virus. Humanity is on the brink of extinction. Seeing two uninfected boys fills John with hope. He believes they might hold the key to curing the virus and saving humanity. However, compared to the naive and calm Marco is much harder to control. This doesn't sit well with John, who ultimately gives the order to get rid of Marco. Bearded Guy, unable to harm a child, secretly decides to let Marco go. But Marco isn't willing to abandon Miko. When Bearded Guy refuses to help further, Marco sneaks back into the camp on his own. After locating Miko, the two manage to evade the guards and escape into the night. The next morning, John discovers that the boys have disappeared. Enraged, he doesn't hesitate to shoot Bearded Guy in the head as punishment for his betrayal. Meanwhile, Marco and Miko have no idea how far they've run. Miko begins to moan for water. Frustrated and overwhelmed, Marco yells at him, complaining that he should have left Miko behind. But when he sees Miko's teary, pleading eyes, his resolve softens. Marco decides to look for water. He comes across an abandoned building and ventures inside. The place is filled with leftover supplies from previous fugitives. Marco grabs some clothes and finds half a bottle of water in a box. As he steps out onto the balcony, he gets his first real view of the world beyond the forest. It's devastating. As far as the eye can see, most people have transformed into monstrous creatures. At that moment, Marco realizes the truth. The forest isn't just his home. It's a pure and protected world, an innocent fairy tale that his father had carefully constructed to shield him from the horrors of reality. Suddenly there's noise from the ground floor. It turns out that John and his men have tracked them down. John draws his weapon, ready to kill Miko without hesitation. But before he can act, a drone appears above them, causing John to stop and tense up. The next moment, gunfire erupts, and John and his men are instantly riddled with bullets collapsing to the ground. Hidden in the shadows, Marco silently watches. Shortly after, two fully armed soldiers appear. Miko, seeing Marco, shakes his head, signaling for him to leave. But Marco accidentally makes a noise that immediately draws the soldiers' attention. Miko, seeing this, silently picks up a weapon from the ground. The soldiers react quickly, and before they realize what has happened, they've already killed Miko. Marco is devastated to learn that Miko died trying to protect him. Once the soldiers leave, he gathers his strength and continues his journey, alone, still determined to find his mother. However, Stone Valley is only a place his father invented. Marco will never truly find it. After leaving the fairy tale refuge of the forest, Marco gradually begins to realize the harsh truth. In his anger, he tears apart the fairy tale book and lets out a cry. But all that responds is an endless cold silence. He climbs to the top of a mountain and gazes at the vast city below. With nowhere else to go, Marco, full of curiosity, enters the city, a place he has never seen before, an enormous stone forest. He vaguely feels that this might be the legendary Stone Valley, but the city is still plagued with zombies. Marco cautiously avoids them and eventually finds his way to an abandoned hospital. He opens the door to a patient's room, and to his surprise, he sees a woman dressed in white, the figure from his fairy tale. Thinking she's his mother, he carefully approaches her and reaches out to hug her. The woman quickly grabs his hand, but the next moment Marco feels a sharp pain on the back of his hand. She turns around, and instead of the gentle face of a fairy, he sees the terrifying face of a zombie. Marco immediately runs for his life, blocking the door with a metal rod behind him. The sound of zombies relentlessly pounding on the door fills the air. Overwhelmed by helplessness, Marco breaks down in tears. The repeated blows of reality are too cruel for a boy to bear. After escaping the hospital, Marco is numb. His expression is vacant. He comes across a wall covered with missing person notices, and silently adds a photo of his own mother. Then he enters an abandoned building drawn by a sound coming from inside. As he approaches, he realizes it's only a holographic projection. The sound attracts a horde of zombies. The fragile iron door won't hold much longer. Exhausted and defeated, Marco finally gives up trying to escape. He puts on his headphones and waits for the zombies to invade. At that moment, countless bullets rain down from the sky. When Marco opens his eyes again, he finally sees the fairy. He has been searching for all this time. Her glow is blinding. The female soldier removes her mask and, noticing the wound on Marco's hand, immediately draws her weapon. But Marco shows no fear. He calmly embraces her and gently wipes the tears from her face. Then the soldier notices the mark M on Marco's palm. This is the symbol of post-apocalyptic newborns. They are immune to the virus, representing the last hope for humanity's resurgence. Marco takes the soldier's hand, and together they walk away from the ruins.
Holy Jesus! What is that? What the f*** is that?
Okay.